Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and privilege to be here. Let me introduce honorable guest, Dr. Alex Karp, CEO and founder of Palantir. First of all, let me start from my private experience. On 24th of February last year, when we started Initiative Strong Together, which has accommodated more than 40,000 Ukrainian refugees in Lithuania. We didn't have any tool to manage many sorts of different information. We had almost 20,000 different units of real estate, houses, flats, offices, rooms. All of it was different. As different were the families of refugees and different were their needs. And someone from Department of Statistics of Lithuania offered me to try Palantir. After a couple of days, we managed to teach 400 volunteers to use Palantir, and we're still using it for free. So, Mr. Karp, first of all, let me express our gratitude and thank you for helping us to help Ukrainians. And Mr. Karp, you are the founder of one of the most successful international companies. And Lithuania has 0.5% of population of European Union. Why are you here?
Well, probably lots of reasons. But I'm very happy to be here because I mean, there's lots of always answers to a question, but I believe the way you build a successful entity, obviously much less important than a country, is you have firm beliefs that are somewhat unchangeable. So in the Palantir context, we're unabashedly pro-Western. I would define that as an intellectual, philosophical, legal prerequisites, certain notions of freedom that vary culture to culture, certain notions of what it means to have a just society, of which there are great variants between the Baltics, Germany, France, England, America, but in general are very different than one would find in countries that are adversarial to us. I tend to be very focused on where we hire the best talent, and especially where we hire the best talent, where other people who are similarly situated, so scaled operational tech companies, are unaware that the talent is disproportionately good. I would say Lithuania and the Baltics are very good examples of that. Very small, I guess if you take the whole Baltics, it's like 6 million people and it's just over 1% of Europe, but a very large percent of the people I would like to hire are running around. I see a correlation, which frankly no one in Silicon Valley saw, but I think is true, between deep beliefs in defense and a vibrant tech community. So I think there's an advantage. And then last not least, the world is so, the product you're using to help refugees is a product we built almost 20 years ago. It powers a lot of European intelligence and defense, or mainly on anti-terror, not so much in public eyes, but and is very good for war crimes, which we're also supplying it for. But then subsequently, we built a commercial product, we built a product for special operators, we built a product for managing products, and now we're launching an AI platform. And the ability to work with algorithms or large language models, I think in a context of a platform while maintaining constitutional norms, so targeting while doing that within a Western context, or using large language models to power your economy while not violating data protection, is much more a question of know-how than money. And so I see the Baltics as having, and England, quite frankly, as having a huge advantage as places to build this out over other parts. And so I think there's a lot of structural reasons. But then at the end of the day, I also have a lot of experience with the government here, and things we're allowed to talk about and things we're not. And it's very, very positive. So there's lots of reasons. But, a lot of our reason for, we've gone from no revenue to large revenue and profits and going public with ups and downs and vicissitudes. But I would say we are the dominant player in pure software in defense in the world, unquestionably. And I believe, will be the dominant player in constitutional uses, ethical uses, and monetization of AI in America in the next couple of years. And so a lot of the success is focusing on what we believe, being pragmatic about what we build, building these things years before other people do, being willing to be laughed at, and then winning. And I think Baltics and Lithuania would be great partners in that.
Okay, let's go to the technologies on battlefield. And you have created the system which you call kill chain.
Privately. Publicly, the lawyers have some innocuous,
so
something like tech for the amelioration of unwanted blah, blah, blah. Some term we're supposed to use.
Okay, let's...
for me, it's the kill chain.
Kill chain sounds good. So how does kill chain work?
Well, there's a larger issue. I'm happy using algorithms to target, or using algorithms to a much less valuable thing to change your supply chain and enterprise. The key issue for democracies is, of course, it's very hard to train the algorithms to identify objects, and there was a lot of doubts about whether those algorithms would be applicable to a European war context. One of the advantages, quite frankly, we had is I always believed that this war would happen, and we began supplying our product from the very beginning. But it turns out that the algorithms are equally effective in identification off of any data source. So what are the data sources you could theoretically use? Well, most people in this room are familiar with various forms of SIGINT, various forms of anything involving a sensor, and obviously satellite data. And there's the high resolution, less high resolution, running algorithms that are trained to find objects in huge, in a large geographical situation where they're hard to find. So that's point one. And the large language...
So it's mostly satellite?
It depends who's using it. And that, like, you could just imagine people in this room. Some countries have better satellites than others, but you can make this work with low quality satellites, so commercial satellites. You can make this work. You can make it work very effectively even without satellites. But the more data you have, the more efficacious, and the higher the quality of the data, the more efficacious, obviously, the targeting would be. And then, so you have the algorithmic part. So you have the data acquisition, you have the algorithmic part. And then actually what's very interesting, and what we're going to power our commercial offering with, is that people in the lay world think, okay, well, the algorithm will find the target and it will automatically take it out. Yeah, well, not if you don't want to go to jail. Like in a Western context, to target, you have a handoff function. So a target is found, then you have to ask and answer lots of questions, mostly with a human in the loop. Who else is with the target? Are they combatants? Is the target near a hospital? How far away is it from the hospital? Is it near a school? How far away is it from the school? Then you have complicated issues. So the person doing the targeting sees 5 people. They're officially listed as combatants. What the system also has to factor in is, what if one of the targets is an asset? What if it's an agent? What if it's an unknowing asset, like you've compromised their phone and all your intel is coming from this one phone? So those kind of things actually have to be handed off to a separate architecture, which allows you to then feed these things into the decision-making loop and then say, okay, now we can target. And so using algorithms, whether they're algorithms on the battlefield, which are kind of what people imagine, or large language models, which are super interesting, someday will be very dangerous, but in the near term are unusable by everyone in this room, because you would have to be able to segment what part of the data set can they see in your enterprise, what part can they not see. By the way, I think pragmatic countries in the Baltics, as an example, will be able to leapfrog, because this is not a question of money. This is a question of, what do we invest in? How do we invest in it? Do we have the technical talent? And so while larger. One of the beauties of software. I mean, I am actually, certainly in America, I'm a progressive. Now, that's partly because I think everyone should have teeth and be able to read and write. And so I don't know what I would be in Lithuania, probably on the right, but in some form or another, or in Germany, I really don't know who I'd vote for.
Thank you.
But it's like the beauty of technology is it's not a question of scale, size in the beginning. It's a question of, do you know what you're doing? Do you invest in the right way? Do you invest in the right people? And in this context, do you have a pragmatic way of dealing with technology? So you're not just going to completely say, we can't use large language models because we can't replicate how the logic works, which does make them non-operable in a kind of classic data protection context. But you could have a handoff function. I think these countries, Poland, Baltics, Lithuania, will figure this out, and there'll be disproportional innovation here. I have this ongoing debate with and I did a PhD at the University of Frankfurt, which is a very progressive university, famous for a certain kind of philosophy most people don't read anymore, which is actually more like poetry. But lots of academics in my family, and the single area I really disagree with them on is, if you want to stop someone from crossing your border, you have to scare them. If they're not scared, why would they listen to this printed paper that they don't care about? And then the other thing about AI and warfare that I was talking to a very nice person interviewing me, and he was like, well, are you going to be like Oppenheimer, who at the end of his life felt bad about building nuclear bombs? And I was telling him, yes, but Oppenheimer got to feel bad about it because he was alive. And, maybe it's like, in the absence of our adversaries, I think a lot of the things that we provide maybe shouldn't be built. But it's like, they will build them or we will build them. And currently we have enormous advantages. I mean, we, the West, in building software. But they're not so great as this if we stopped building them, they wouldn't. And then the norms will be their norms. And I don't want to live like that.
One of the advantages could be artificial intelligence. How can it be used in the battlefield?
Well, there are different kinds of artificial intelligence. The two big moments of last year were algorithmic warfare, so stuff you've described and I've neglected to comment on exactly, but I think most people believe have changed the art in which, software in warfare is no longer, it went from being fraud to joke to determinative. And then large language models, so OpenAI, but there'll be many others, which is a very different kind of artificial intelligence, arguably the most powerful. And so, but the question is not, it's how you harness it. He who harnesses, or she who harnesses the AI will win, and then harnessing it. So how do you allow a large language model to ask and answer questions on non-classified networks that are very important? Show me all assets according to all public data, and run that against a subset of my data that I'm willing to expose to a large language model run out of Seattle or Palo Alto, which is going to be not everything, I imagine, I hope. And that's one reason I see a huge advantage for Eastern European countries, because for constitutional and other reasons that I largely support, you're just going to be able to move faster than other people. And that's where the advantage is.
Elon Musk was calling for pause in developing of artificial intelligence for some time because it's getting dangerous. It could be dangerous for humanity. But in your interview to British Telegraph a few days ago, you were saying that you do not share the idea about pausing because that's one of the biggest Western advantages.
Well, I would be, if look, China and Russia become peaceful, rule of law following nations, I am in favor of pausing. Until then, I don't know what that means.
But they are not.
Well, that's what I believe. I presume that's what most people in this room believe. That's probably what most people in Lithuania and the Baltics believe and know, in Poland, and not everyone agrees with that. Plus, honestly, lots and lots of people are economically conflicted, which, it's like, these countries, especially China, have large export markets, and that shapes people's views. We've never sold to China and Russia. I love when people, in the beginning of the war, people were like, when are you going to pull out of Russia? And presumably China. I'm like, I'd love to tease them. I was like, never. And they get upset. We're never there. Yeah, but that's,
You have just announced Palantir will be providing Ukraine with the technology developed in your UK office to help investigators to investigate more than 78,000 registered war crimes. How can technology help investigating war crimes in Ukraine?
Well, this is actually the product they're using. It was our first product. We call it Project Gotham. For people involved in Intel in Europe, you will have seen this product most likely, even if you don't acknowledge ever having seen it in public. And there's certain attributes to the product. So the lay version of prosecuting someone for war crimes is you have a picture of them doing something heinous and they go to jail. Now in the West, we have a presumption of innocence even for people engaged in war crimes, which means that when they go into court in Lithuania or in The Hague or where they will have lawyers, probably very effective lawyers, who will call into question the sources of the data. And what our product allows you to do, and the reason why it was adopted so widely in Europe, is it allows you to segment and tag the data. So you can show the war crime and then only show the data that the court allows them to come into court. And then if things are allowed to come in or data is allowed to come into court or taken out, you can rework the whole stack and show it in a visual way. So it's very, very useful for prosecutions and has been used in the kind of law enforcement context. We're doing, quite frankly, a lot less in law enforcement with it in the US because that's kind of a bummer. But it's very, very effective. So human trafficking for the very same reasons. So prosecutions are about, and then, so in court, it's very effective because you can do it within the constitutional confines of court. Outside of court, which is, I think, one of the main reasons this is important, it's a very visual product. So telling someone that someone was engaged in war crimes is one thing. Showing the war crime visually to the public changes the court of public opinion, which is very important because Ukraine needs the support of countries where not everyone supports, unfortunately, supporting Ukraine, like in the United States. So, we have a presidential election coming up, and, there's a significant portion of the American populace that, for reasons we don't agree with, are not inherently supportive of the level of support we've given to Ukraine. To convince those people, you need to engage in a dialogue that is primarily visual. What happened? How did it happen? Who did it? And then are they being prosecuted? Because if this is just a battle of like foreign policy, then it is very likely that support will decline and, depending on the winds, disappear. And so that's why this is actually crucial for our ongoing support, because the war of public opinion, I would say, especially with a little bit of bias in the United States, and is crucial to guaranteeing the level of support that has happened in the past, and that cannot be a purely word-on-word debate. It has to be visual, and then the visual documents are going to be called into question, so they have to be done with great rigor. And that's how you guarantee long-term support for what I think most people in this room view as a crucial effort upon which a lot turns. For us too, not just for the Ukrainians. I mean, it's like, it's so obvious, but I guess worth articulating. It's like if you let Ukraine fall, that it will have profound implications for the way that other countries behave. And the future of a rule-based order.
So that's why you were one of the first international businessmen to meet President Zelensky.
Yeah, because we were, I think, what's interesting, I guess this is somewhat in private, but it's both interesting that international, I think I'm the only business person roughly of however you want to define it, not only to go, but still is gone. And it's quite surprising because honestly, you'd think more people would go. I was obviously honored to go, but I also, we've been supporting their efforts from the beginning. I guess I failed in embarrassing other tech people to go, but it is very dangerous. So, maybe, yeah.
We almost ran out of our time, but the very, very last question. Did your company help to track and kill Osama bin Laden?
We can never. I'll tell you, the closest thing to an answer is when you look at when you open the paper and look in the news about these kind of things, there's a 2/3 chance, depending on the country involved, that somehow my company was involved. Which is, we're 4,000 people. We have just under $2 billion in revenue. So it's market cap goes up and down. It is surprising the footprint that we have. And I think it's because in the end, we are moving to a software AI-driven world, and we built the things that you will need. We've been building them for the last 20 years. And so the impact is way, way beyond what is commonly known and what the numbers say. And that I'm very proud of that.
It means yes. It was a great pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Karp, and please give a big round of applause to Alex Karp. Thank you.